Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And some breaking political news while we have been on air, because the Liberal Democrat leader, Tim Farron, has just announced that he is stepping down as leader of the party. They won 12 seats in last week's general election, 4 more than in the previous election, but it wasn't the fight back that the party had hoped for. And this is what Mr. Farron said just a few moments ago.
There are Christians in politics who take the view that they should impose the tenets of their faith on society. But I have not taken that approach because I fundamentally disagree with it. It is not liberal, and actually it's counterproductive when it comes to advancing the gospel. Even so, I seem to have been the subject of suspicion because of what I believe and who my faith is in which case we are kidding ourselves if we think we yet live in a tolerant, liberal society. And that's why I have chosen to step down as leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Well, our political correspondent Vicky Young is at the Lib Dem HQ in Westminster, where Mr. Farron has just been speaking. And Vicky, it's got to be said that given the events here overnight, it does seem rather strange timing.
Yeah, that's right. He says that he made the decision in recent days and weeks, but obviously it is a day when there is lots of other news around. Nevertheless, he is the first leader now to say he's standing down after that general election. He's been leader for 2 years, but he made it very clear that he took personal responsibility because, as he said at the beginning of that general election campaign, questions about his faith, his Christianity, asked again and again whether he thought that gay sex was a sin, and he said some of his answers to them could have been better. But he also made it clear he felt guilty about the fact it distracted from the Liberal Democrats campaign. They did gain seats, but maybe didn't make as big a breakthrough as some would have hoped. But he spoke at length about the quandary that he felt he was in, that he felt torn very much between being a committed Christian and being a political leader. So 2 years into the job he is going, there will now be a leadership contest as we go into the summer. There are, of course, some new MPs, but our old faces, people like Vince Cable back in Parliament, people like Joe Swinson and Ed Davey too. The party will now go forward into that leadership contest.
Vicky Young with that breaking news from Westminster. Thank you.
And there's some fairly sizable news tonight from the Liberal Democrats, right?
Yes, the Lib Dem leader, Tim Farron, has resigned. You'll remember at the very beginning of the campaign, he was asked by you and others, he's a committed evangelical Christian, if he thought gay sex was a sin. And again he decided to answer a different question, saying he didn't think being gay was a sin. And eventually, because this became such a distraction to his campaign, he turned round and actually confronted the question itself and said he thought gay sex was not a sin. Well, I think deep down he feels he slightly compromised his faith on that in order to get a political problem out of the way. And you can hear a little bit of that perhaps in this statement.
The consequences of the focus on my faith is that I have found myself torn between living as a faithful Christian and serving as a political leader. A better, wiser person than me may have been able to deal with this more successfully, to remain faithful to Christ while leading a political party in the current environment. To be a political leader, especially of a progressive liberal party in 2017, and to live as a committed Christian, to hold faithfully to the Bible's teaching, has felt impossible for me.
A very personal, emotional statement by Tim Farron. 2 possible candidates to succeed him, MPs who've come back into Parliament, Sir Vince Cable and Joe Swinson. We'll find out more, no doubt, over the coming weeks. But the Lib Dems say, whatever happens, they will have a new leader by their conference in the autumn.
Gary, thank you very much.
Because of the magnitude of what has happened here, we might normally have confined our political reporting to what we have just heard about the fire. But the Liberal Democrat leader Tim Farron chose today to announce that he is resigning from the job. He said he had not been able to deal with being a faithful Christian while serving as the leader of a progressive Liberal party.
In front of his party's MPs, Tim Farron resigned for a reason most unusual in the modern era. Not results, not scandal, but faith.
The consequences of the focus on my faith is that I have found myself torn between living as a faithful Christian and serving as a political leader. To be a political leader, especially of a progressive Liberal Party in 2017, and to live as a committed Christian, to hold faithfully to the Bible's teaching, has felt impossible for me.
Lib Dem Home Affairs spokesman Lord Paddock resigned earlier today, citing Farron's views. It's thought the main problem was how long it had taken Mr Farron to say he didn't think gay sex was a sin during the election.
You won't say whether you think having gay sex is a sin or not. Well, you won't answer.
I think it's fair to say that I've answered the question.
But you'll be asked this time and time again.
It's fair to say I've answered the question, but thank you.
It took days for Mr Farron to answer the question fully enough to close the issue down, and the damage was done. The most likely contenders to replace Tim Farron are thought to be the recently re-elected Vince Cable, similarly re-elected Joe Swinson, or party health spokesman Norman Lamb. Meanwhile, Mr Farron is clearly unhappy about his treatment.
I seem to have been the subject of suspicion because of what I believe and who my faith is in which case we are kidding ourselves if we think we yet live in a tolerant, liberal society. And that's why I have chosen to step down as leader of the Liberal Democrats. Thanks very much.
His departure opens an important debate about politics and religion.
And Carl joins us now. So, Carl, clearly the Lib Dems are in a bit of a state of disarray tonight, but the two main parties also in a state of flux.
To an extent, certainly the Conservatives more so than Labour. Jeremy Corbyn has finally got in place his top team, his shadow cabinet, with the most interesting announcement being the return of Owen Smith to shadow cabinet. Viewers will remember he was the man that challenged Jeremy Corbyn for the leadership last summer. He will be the shadow Northern Ireland secretary. Meanwhile, the Conservatives are still trying to nail down their deal with Northern Ireland's DUP. I'm told negotiations are still going on, with Treasury officials looking over the numbers on what's been agreed. Now, while that continues tomorrow, the rest of the Northern Irish parties will all be here to talk to the Prime Minister about getting power sharing back up and running in Belfast. The biggest and angriest of those parties is Sinn Féin. Gerry Adams will be here, and he will want to raise that DUP Conservative deal with the Prime Minister, which Sinn Féin believe that means that the government can no longer be an honest broker in the talks about what's going on in Belfast. So all of that still happening while the Prime Minister is trying to reach an agreement with the DUP. I think that means that Theresa May's guarantee of a majority in Parliament has been pushed back at least by a few days, and possibly even into next week.
OK, Carl, thank you very much indeed for that.
I've been getting away with it all my